It appears that AEW may have a major surprise plan for AEW Dynasty tonight. And the good news is AEW Dynasty is having a late surge of ticket sales, which means this will be better than last year in terms of attendance. So it looks like AEW is finally capturing some momentum. They know they have to make a big splash at this pay-per-view. And the good news is it sounds like this surprise could very well be the thing that excites fans. In addition to that, former WWE stars have appeared in MLW. We're going to talk about that and why perhaps no contracts have actually been signed. And we got to talk about Chris Jericho potentially leaving AEW for WWE, because yes, he is talking about that publicly. All right, guys, first things first, I think we got to talk about it. Bishop Dyer has appeared in MLW. What a really interesting night. I don't know if any of you guys saw MLW Battle Riot. It was available for free on YouTube. And Bishop Dyer, also known as Baron Corbin, appeared in MLW. Seems like he's aligned with Donovan Dijak. And look, this was a really interesting debut. They came out, they attacked Matt Riddle, and then they had the 40-man Battle Riot match. And he was there. He obviously didn't win the match. But they have something cooking with Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin is not coming back to WWE. It doesn't sound like he has plans to go back to WWE. And what's really interesting is a lot of people were thinking about him potentially going to AEW. Well, the thing about Baron Corbin or Bishop Dyer at this point is that everything that he seems to be doing past WWE is short-term, no long-term commitments. So we know that he's been announced for MLPW, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. We know that he's done GCW, and we know that he's doing MLW. And it seems like Bishop Dyer is going to continue working for the smaller companies without any sort of long-term commitment, which I think is a very interesting strategy. I actually liked what I saw from him in MLW. I would like to see if maybe MLW could come up with something relatively cool for him. And of course, this whole allegiance that he has with Dijak is quite interesting. I actually thought last night was a really fun show for MLW. I don't necessarily like the idea of Matt Riddle retaining the belt. I thought that was kind of an interesting choice, but maybe there could be a bigger and better storyline with Matt Riddle potentially dropping the belt maybe to Bishop Dyer at some point. He's such a great talent, man. I would just like to see him really get a fair share of an opportunity to show the world what WWE could have done with him. And well, who knows? We'll see what happens, obviously. So.
Now would be the best time to remind you that we have a major goal to hit 100,000 subscribers. Over 40% of the viewers who watch this channel are not subscribed. Please click subscribe if you enjoy staying educated on everything with wrestling news.
All right, guys, and that brings us to our next topic. Chris Jericho openly talking about potentially going back to WWE. It sounds so weird because for a long time it seemed like he would never go back. And then, of course, you know, the WWE has the Hall of Fame and stuff, and Chris Jericho has just been really, really like open about not really caring about certain things. So here's what's really interesting. There was speculation that I think really changed the tone of Chris Jericho. So Ibu of Wrestle Purist back in like 2024-ish, he reported that AEW's contract with Jericho is set to expire in 2025. Now, Chris Jericho has literally talked about potentially considering the idea of returning to WWE. Basically, he says, I would have considered a return to WWE before things even changed. Once again, there are two teams you could play on, which is amazing, and it's one of the reasons why I want to take a chance and go to AEW in the first place. It was a real gamble, which, by the way, I definitely agree with. Chris Jericho leaving WWE, going to AEW, being a very, very important part of AEW's beginning. Like, without a doubt, it's a risk. Nobody knew if AEW would be successful or a failure. Nobody knew what to expect from AEW, let alone Chris Jericho being the biggest name in AEW at that point. You really didn't know what the benefit was for Chris Jericho. Now, he's publicly talking about this, and his AEW deal does appear to be in its final year. He says, of course, I would consider going back there. I would also consider not going back there, too. It just depends on what the situation is and what's going on with me at the time. And who knows, maybe this is Chris Jericho like leveraging, you know, I think people kind of underestimate this, but when you could potentially be negotiating for a new contract, talking publicly about potentially going to WWE or something could potentially get Tony Khan to offer Chris Jericho more money. I said this on the live stream with Billy, and me and Billy have really agreed with this. Like, Chris Jericho could just be better utilized in AEW. He's still talented. He's still very gifted in the ring, despite the age. And like, he's just great, you know? Maybe the learning tree isn't great, but Chris Jericho is still great. And with the right programs, he is a useful asset to whatever company honestly wants him. Now, if Chris Jericho does actually consider going to WWE, I don't think we see Chris Jericho as a full-timer in WWE. And if Chris Jericho re-signs with AEW, I don't want to see him as part of the learning tree. I was actually in the prediction show. I really just wanted him to lose at Dynasty and basically screw off with the learning tree because there's just so much more that you could do with Chris Jericho. But this whole idea that Chris Jericho probably wasn't going to go back to WWE, it's kind of different now. It seems like maybe that is a possibility, and that is something to pay attention to. You just simply never know. And that brings us to our next topic and our final topic, ladies and gentlemen. AEW made the choice of having a late addition to AEW Dynasty, and it does include Max Caster. And they are doing an open challenge with a surprise. They are not revealing who his open challenge will be. And there is this belief that AEW could be planning either a major debut or a major return. Now, as you guys know, we talked about this the other day on the channel, where I believe Josh Alexander would come into AEW as part of the Owen Cup. And that's pretty clear. You know, they have a wild card and they're teasing something there. I would actually like to see Josh Alexander debut in this particular spot. They're in Philly. It's going to be a great crowd. Josh Alexander is a hell of a talent. He can come out there, absolutely destroy Max Caster. And if you want, you can even have him cut a promo saying, I want in on the Owen Cup. And then he could fill the void of being the wild card. But I want to see him in this spot. And I think this is a great idea. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of Max Caster. I don't think Max Caster's gimmick is good. I don't think Max Caster in this role is good. I think the Acclaimed has been completely killed. And we really haven't seen anybody benefit from breaking them up. So what I would suggest is if you really want this Max Caster gimmick to go over, you can do something where Max Caster comes out. And at least one positive that could come out of this is Max Caster comes out, he does his open challenge, and Josh Alexander accepts. If it's not Josh Alexander, who knows what it's going to be, but I think that would be the most realistic thing. We know that Josh Alexander is bound for AEW. And maybe, maybe this is AEW's opportunity to really make a big splash with him. It's going to be a squash. I think regardless of what happens, it's going to be a squash, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So we'll see what happens and then kind of go from there. But I will be live after Dynasty, so make sure you guys stay tuned in. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.